Hello, everybody, and welcome to the chair. Just wanted to do a recap instead of making it on one video recap and preview. Just do a recap here tonight on Monday after the Monday night game. That was well, it wasn't worth for a Monday night. It wasn't even worth for a Thursday night. Wasn't worth much. We'll get to that though. But NFL preview. I mean, the NFL recap of Week 4 that was, and it was pretty wild to say the least. I was only 8-7 in picks. A lot of happenings that shouldn't happen happened. Let's just say that. As I look at my picks and think, wow, I underestimated teams. I thought too highly of teams, and as I always say to a friend, I always think that the first 4 weeks are pretty random, and then you know anything can happen, and then everything balances itself out. But sometimes you'll have years where you'll have crazy upsets every week, or or just pretty much everything goes routine. But this was a week that really did not, to say the least. So let's get it started. Thursday we had the start of week 4. Philadelphia came in 1-2 to Green Bay, who was 3-0, and it shaped out to be a good game and what everybody thought it would be. Um, Carson Wentz started the course with Philadelphia. He had 3 passing touchdowns and 160 yards. Howard, Jordan Howard, who was traded from Chicago, and Chicago's missing him for sure, uh, for only, I think, a third round or fourth round pick, which was pretty surprising to me. Had 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sanders, the rookie, had 72 yards. They had a great ground game going for uh, Philadelphia. Try to say that 3 times. Great ground game. Fast, though. Uh, the tight end, Ertz at 65 yards. Jeffrey with 38 and a touchdown. Howard out of the backfield with 28 and a touchdown. Gordon with a touchdown. And 16 yards receiving. It was one of those complete games, and then the Eagle defense really showed up, getting some key stops and picks from what I remember of the game. It was a pretty good one, and there was on the other side of the ball you had Aaron Rodgers, who threw for 422 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception that loomed large late in the game. Rodgers himself outgained the whole backfield. He had 46 yards rushing. Jones did have 21 yards and 1 touchdown, but that was all. Devontae Adams had a stellar game, a star game, 180 yards receiving. Graham and Allison both had a touchdown for the Packers. Thing is, Philly led 21-20 at the half. So you knew it was going to be one of those games where Philadelphia would have to strike back and forth with Green Bay, and that really happened. Like I said, defense did a great job. There are key drops by Graham, especially on a fourth down try by Green Bay. And then Adams got hurt late in the game, and he wasn't in on the final drive that the Packers needed to tie or possibly go for 2 and win. But the final was 34-27. Philadelphia, I certainly got the loss. I thought Green Bay would run it up. Oh, trying to figure out what games to go to, but I will go to one of the games, the early games. It was Carolina in Houston. Uh, this game, I'll tell you what, Allen did not have a Really good game. He had 3 fumbles. That was pretty bad, but McCaffrey again had a stellar game, even against the Houston defense that's pretty good themselves. Uh, that just shocked me that Carolina's continuing Kyle Allen. Even though he had no touchdowns, he did throw for 232 yards, but it was the 3 fumbles that he lost that was pretty big in the game. McCaffrey 93 yards and a touchdown against that defense. 86 yards as well receiving. Right at 58, 59 yards. DJ Moore had 44, Samuel had 32. And Shaq Thompson was big defensively for the Carolina Panthers. Deshaun Watson on the other side of the ball, quarterback, he looked kind of off, 160 yards. Even DeAndre Hopkins threw a pass that went for a pick. They tried to do a screen pass backwards, and then Hopkins was trying to get Fuller, I believe, on the other side of the field. And those plays, if not done well, are usually turned over. Carlos Hyde at 58 yards rushing. Duke Johnson with 56. He finally had a game where he had a big number of yards. Hopkins only had 41 yards receiving, Stills 24, Fuller with 23. So it was one of those games where the Houston just let him. It was a big letdown, and I picked them, and I thought there would be no issue at all, but there was. So Carolina, like I said, 16-10, they defeated Houston. It was one of those games Houston should have won, but the offense didn't play as well. The defense did just enough, I feel like. Let's go to Jacksonville and Denver. In the Mile High City, the 0-3 Broncos lost by a field goal last week, and they did again this week. The final was 26-24 Jacksonville. It was a comeback to win. Denver led 17-6 at the half. They finally got their first sacks, and it was by the field goal, by the way, to win it was by Josh Lambo. But the first sacks of the season came via Von Miller and then Bradley Chubb, and Chubb is out for the season. He had a torn ACL, and he was playing through it all game long. That amazed me when I heard that. Then Jacksonville came back, and then Denver came back with 132. They led in the fourth quarter. They led 24-23, and then Minshew Magic is what it's being called. It's kind of like, Tebow Magic in 11, but pump the brakes a little. Leonard Fournette was pretty much the sole reason, other from Minshew, that the Jaguars won. Fournette had a wonderful game. He had 29 carries for 225 yards. That was vintage Fournette 2017. Minshew had 213 yards, but 2 touchdowns, no picks. Westbrook had 66 yards, and Chark had 44. O'Shaughnessy had a big touchdown catch. Armstead had one as well. O'Shaughnessy, one of those tight ends, very tall and a great target and a big target to look for a quarterback. Broncos with Flacco, 303 yards, just like the area code, 303. 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Lindsay had 53 yards on the ground. Freeman with 16. Emmanuel Sanders had a great game. 104 yards receiving. Sutton had 62 yards, but 2 touchdowns. Hamilton 57. It was just one of those back and forth games after Broncos led, and they lost the same way as last week with heartbreak. And for that, they're 0-4, and the Jacks go to 2-2. So that was a pretty wild one that we had in Denver. At the end again, the Broncos get their hearts stomped out. So let's go to Seattle, Arizona. Shout out to Meshki and the Grinds. Seattle coming in at 2-1. Arizona at 0-2 and a tie. And pretty much the one highlight for Arizona was a Kyler Murray rush touchdown at the end of the game. But he threw a key interception that was taken by Jadeveon Clowney, and this was his first highlight, definitely with Seattle. He returned it back for a touchdown. The Seahawks led 10-0 to the 15-minute mark in the second quarter. Wilson had 240 yards, passing 1 touchdown. Big day for Chris Carson, 22 carries, 104 yards. Disley, the tight end, 7 receptions for 57 yards and 1 touchdown. Lockett, 51. Brown with 50. Carson, 41 out of the backfield. For the Cardinals, it was David Johnson had a step back. He had 40 yards rushing. Murray with 27 himself. David Johnson had 99 yards receiving for Fitzgerald with 57. Kirk with 37. And again, it was a 27-10 easy victory for Seattle. So they go to 3-1, and the Cardinals at 0-3-1. So let's go to Miami. It was the 0-3 Dolphins hosting the 1-2 Chargers. Final score was 30-10. And it was on those hot days still. Phillip Rivers, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 310 yards passing. Eckler, again, a great game, 60 yards, 1 touchdown. Rushing, 62 yards receiving and a touchdown. Ayman had 76 yards catching. Allen with 48 himself. The issue for the Chargers now as they go on, they need another tight end. Copeland, who's one of their backup tight ends, had a pretty bad injury, and he knew it, and it's one of those where he's going to be out for the season, unfortunately, for them and the Chargers. Josh Rosen for the Dolphins had 1 touchdown, 1 pick, and 180 yards passing. Kenyon Drake had 44 yards and 9 carries. Devontae Parker had a touchdown in the corner, 70 yards receiving on the day. And the funny thing was that Miami led 7-3 in the first quarter late in it, and that was that was pretty odd to see. So let's go to New Jersey. It was the 0-3 Redskins going to the 1-2 Giants. And Case Keenum did start, but later he was benched in the second quarter. Haskins came in, but it was a pretty ugly game. It was a pretty rude welcoming to the NFL for Haskins, Dwayne Haskins. For Daniel Jones, however, it was his first home start, and the crowd was loud. The defense was great. They led 14-0 till the second quarter with 2:15 left, and then the Washington got a field goal. Peppers had a pick 6 in the third. Haskins, 107 yards passing, 3 interceptions, no touchdowns. Case Keenum is doing so bad with 37 yards passing and 1 interception. Adrian Peterson with 28 yards on the ground, 23 by Haskins. Thompson with 4. Thompson had 56 out of the backfield for receiving. Sprinkle had 20. It was just one of those ugly ball games passing. as there were 4 picks thrown by by Washington, and they looked pretty easy uh, for the Giants to take. Daniel Jones had 225 yards passing, one touchdown, 2 picks himself. He just gotta not take those shots from what I saw, not take those throws downfield. But he'll learn probably from that. Gallman had 63 yards and 1 touchdown rushing. Remember, Giants are without Barkley for the time being. Probably 4 or 5 more weeks. Sterling Shepard had 76 yards receiving. Gallman 55 and a touchdown. Ingram with 54. He had a great game as well for the Giants. Let's go to Atlanta. It was Tennessee going to Georgia. And the Titans were hoping for a better day from Mariota, and they got it. That's what they needed. It kind of almost felt like their season was hanging in the balance because of the showings that they did have. Mariota with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in this one. By the way, that Charger score was 30-10, and the Giants score was 24-3. It was pretty much over with. Mariota, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 327 yards passing. Henry with 100 yards rushing. A.J. Brown had a great game for the Titans, 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. Davis, 91 yards and 1 touchdown. It was a spread out game for the Titans, as much as Mariota can do. But it was a better showing by the Titans. That's what they needed to do. This game was tied 7-7, 8:35 in the first, and then the Titans just took over. It was a poor performance for sure. It was one of those I got wrong because I thought, hey, you've seen how the Titans are playing awful. But that was not the case in Atlanta. The Falcons just gave them the game pretty much. 397 yards for Ryan. He threw the ball 53 times and completed 20. So Freeman only had 28 yards rushing. That can't happen. Hooper had 130 yards receiving. Sanu with 91. Freeman 72. Julio Jones was only 52. Again, when the Titans are good, their secondary is really good. They can knock the balls down or get interceptions, whatever they want to do, they can do when they really do it. So Titans won 24-10 in Atlanta. Titans go to 2-2. The Falcons go to 1-3, and again showing their pretty much dismantling of what they could be, what they should be, and what they aren't. Every week it seems like there's always question marks. Speaking of question marks, Cleveland went to Baltimore, and you didn't know which teams were going to show up of each, or which quarterback would show of each. It was the 1-2 Browns and the 2-1 Ravens. Browns led in this game 7-0 until the 5:52 mark in the first. In the second quarter. 10-7 at the half did the Browns lead, and then pulled away. It was 24-18 with 9:51 to go in the fourth. They led pretty much the whole way. Final score was 40-25 Cleveland. Baker Mayfield had 342 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Odell Beckham Jr. had a pass that should have been caught off of a flea foot. that Odell had to juke away from a couple of linebackers. And he threw it about a good 60 yards from what I saw from the play. I'll tell you what, though, Nick Chubb continuing to impress. Had a great rookie year last year and now having a great year this year as well. 20 carries, 165 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Where they didn't have those touchdowns, the Ravens probably would have won. Landry had 167 yards receiving, but did get hurt, and he was missing the rest of the game after he did in the second half. Sills Jr., the tight end, had a great game. 82 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. Beckham only had 20 yards receiving. For Lamar Miller, decent stats again. You know, everything was predicated on his first game of the year where he broke out, and then, you know, his numbers, of course, went down to average or a little bit more. But he's doing way better, I think, than many expected. He had 247 yards passing, 3 touchdowns with 2 picks. Mark Ingram Jr., great year so far, 71 yards rushing. Jackson with 66 of his own. Snead has 61 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. Hurst had 39. Roberts with 36. Boykin with 31 and a touchdown. Mark Andrews, the tight end, had 31 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. He was coming back from injury. He did practice and he did get on the field. So Browns go to 2-2 and the Ravens go to 2-2, and that ties for first in the North. I wanted to just say Central, but this isn't 1994 or 7 or 99. So let's go to Orchard Park, New York. Buffalo, 3-0 Patriots came into the 2-1 Bills. Brady, who has, what was it? I forget how many wins against the Bills, but he absolutely owns them, especially in Buffalo. Absolutely owns them. I think somebody said he's 3rd all-time in Buffalo home game wins as a quarterback. So there was, Jim Kelly or I don't know who the second one was, but then Brady's number 3, but he's not even a Bill. So that was crazy. Brady didn't have a great game. It was one of those games where you're proud of the defense by Buffalo. They allowed Josh Allen to be in the game and the Bills, but Allen had a bad game himself. Final score was 16-10. New England was close all the way through. Buffalo did have a little comeback after they trailed, but they had their shots. Brady, 150 yards passing, 1 pick, no touchdowns. Sonny Michel had 63 yards rushing. Bolden had 1 touchdown, 4 yards rushing. Receiving, the Patriots, James White out of the backfield at 57. Gordon with 46. Edelman, who was a little banged up, but played 30 yards. Why do they have advertisements? 30 yards passing, 30 yards receiving, I should say. Like I said, the Patriots led 13-0 until the 2-minute warning in second quarter, and then the Bills got a field goal. And Josh Allen on the other side of the ball, this was pretty alarming because he got a helmet-to-helmet to hit. He had to leave the game, but he himself didn't have a great game. He had 153 yards passing and no touchdowns, but 3 pretty bad-looking interceptions. So Matt Barkley, USC, had to come in, and he threw for 127 yards passing and 1 pick himself. That loomed large. It was a tall task to try to beat the Patriots for both quarterbacks for sure. Frank Gore still going. He's like, somebody said he's a Vince Carter of the NFL and running backs. That's pretty accurate right there. 17 carries, 109 yards rushing. Allen himself had 26 yards and 1 touchdown rushing. Cole Beasley had a pretty good game. His first one, I would say, 75 yards receiving. John Brown had 69 yards receiving. Yeldon 68, Knox with 58. And I'd like to mention Matthew Slater had a block field goal, block punt, and he ran it back for a touchdown. So that was Patriot-like. It seemed that was a pretty good game. If you like defense, if you like bad quarterback play. Now this game, again, another early one that I was keeping tabs on and watching. It was the Chiefs and Lions. Uh, both teams are undefeated. 3-0 Kansas City, 2-1, 2-0-1 Detroit. Had to read that correctly. Kansas City trailed 10-0 early. It was kind of like the Raider game that they had in Oakland. Detroit had their 50 unis on. They kind of got some bad calls toward them for Detroit. That would have made a difference for sure. On the other side, Stafford had a great game. He had big throws, big gains. The rushing games had a good going in the game, but there were a lot of fumbles in this game with the Chiefs and the Lions. I know there was a lot of there was 2 by Kansas City, and I believe there was more by Detroit. Let's see. Other from that, it was just sloppy. Yeah, 3 by Detroit. And Pat Mahomes, he didn't throw a touchdown, but he had 315 yards. I think the game plan by Slay and the Lions and Patricia was to frustrate Mahomes, and sort of did. When you're used to scoring touchdowns and throwing for touchdowns, and you don't, you got to go on a rushing game, and they did that. McCoy had 56 yards rushing and a touchdown. Mahomes had 44 himself. Williams with 13 and 2 touchdowns. He came up big for the Chiefs. Kelsey had 85 yards receiving. Watkins with 54. For the Lions, as this game went back and forth, it was great. 291 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Johnson, 125 yards on the ground for Detroit. Seemed like he was running through the holes pretty well and getting big gains. Jones Jr. was 77 yards receiving. Galladay was 67. Hall with 47. Johnson out of the backfield with 32. Hackinson with 27 yards and a touchdown for the tight end. This game went back and forth again. Like I said, late the Lions scored a touchdown to make it 30-27. And then Kansas City late had a Williams touchdown run with 20 seconds left. It was one of those clutch games that you were amazed by. Now let's get to the good news, at least for me, because of the morning games. It was the Raiders going into Indianapolis, and it was the 1-2 Raiders going up against the Colts, who were 1-2. And it was one of those games that just took my breath away, as you could tell. I couldn't believe what I saw. The Raiders were just, running the ball down the field. They were passing well. They led 14-0 right away. The defense played great. Perfect was ejected and now suspended. for an illegal hit and a one of those uh, hits that, as a repeat offender, they felt like he could not come back from. Uh, well, from that, the defense had some swatting passes up front, interceptions and fumbles, and the first interception by the Raiders this season was a pick six by Harris. To go up against a Colts team that had four big injuries, as you saw in my Raider preview, left the Colts short, and even Marlon Mack got hurt, so that helped a bit because they were coming back, but they just ran out of time, did the Colts. So the Raiders did end up winning 31-24. Derek Carr had, I can't believe it's 2 touchdowns, 189 yards passing, but the running game was getting a go with Jacobs with 79 yards rushing. Davis, who just joined the team, the receiver, had 74 yards rushing and a touchdown and a big end around play that broke the Raiders out open to leading in this game. Waller had a big game, some third down catches, 53 yards receiving. Tyrell Williams had a touchdown with 36 yards receiving. Murrow, who's coming into his own, had a touchdown with 30 yards receiving. Jacobs with 29. Renfro with 18. And then Keelan Doss, who I loved seeing out there. I love that he was back with the Raiders. He had a reception for 14 yards. But Whitehead was in there with tackles. Joyner, Harris, Morrow, Joseph, Morrow. Uh, it was just a great effort. The only thing was the penalties on defense. There were some stupid penalties, what the Raiders are accustomed to, that kind of kept the Colts in it, even though the score was almost out of reach, in my opinion. Brissett for the Colts, 265 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Mack had 39 yards, and I had to believe if he didn't get injured, he would have had more and even a touchdown. For the banged up Colts that didn't have Hilton, Pascal had 72 yards receiving. Rodgers with 48 and a touchdown. Ebron had 48 with a touchdown. It was just one of those victories to be proud of, and you just hope it carries along for the Raiders. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, if I remember, I've done everything, but there was one game that just I couldn't believe, and it was. Let's do Minnesota Chicago. Shout out to Skulltube19 on YouTube, Carlos. There's a definite problem at quarterback with the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, it's luring its head very, very precisely because it's out there. Everybody saw it. Kirk Cousins had a real bad game. The defense wasn't good for Minnesota. And even with Chicago, with Trubisky being hurt, Chase Daniel did pretty well. Cohen even scored a touchdown for the Bears receiving. They had their 1930 unis on, which is crazy, in Chicago. So let's get back to Cousins. It was 233 yards, no touchdowns and no picks, but he was pretty off on some throws. Cook only had 35 yards rushing, but a touchdown. Diggs had 108 yards receiving, but that was the lone bright spots was Diggs. But with Thielen, he wanted the ball more, and you could tell after the game. He had 2 receptions for 6 yards. But I think the Bears just did a great great job on defense of not letting Thielen get get open. That was something they probably keyed on and stopped. Like I said, Mitchell Trubisky for the Bears got hurt, but they say that he will be evaluated, and if he does miss time, it won't be too much. But as I look at it, yeah, they say probably miss next week, but they're not sure. Um, so take that for what it is. I I want to say that he'll play tomorrow or play next week, but we'll see what happens. Uh, we'll we'll review that game for sure. Uh, coming up on the next video. Excuse me. The Bears had to go with Chase Daniel, and again, like I said, he did pretty well. 195 yards passing and one touchdown. Montgomery, the rookie running back, with 53 yards uh, rushing. Cohen with only 11. They're just getting away from Cohen. They're not using him. Robinson, the second, has 77 yards receiving. Cohen had a touchdown receiving with seven. That was a 7-yard touchdown. Final score ended up being 16-6. Chicago. It was one of those games where defensively they wanted to keep the Vikings down, and they did just that. So they wanted a low score. Now, like I said, this game here, I could not believe what I was seeing and hearing in LA on Sunday afternoon. The Buccaneers came to town to face the LA Rams. And there were 12 touchdowns scored altogether. I couldn't believe it. Final score was 55-40 Tampa. Uh, I couldn't believe it. They led right away too. It was 21-0 Tampa till the 5:34 mark in the second quarter. Um, the Rams trailed 28-20 till the third, and then the Buccaneers escaped. The Rams did catch him at 48-40, but then Adama Sue, who played for the Rams last year, uh, scooped up a fumble from Goff, and he took it back to the touchdown that pretty much sealed the game for the surprising Buccaneers. And for me, it felt like Adama